Hello and welcome to Oakville Matters. Let's talk about Glen Abbey. It's been a while since we gave Glen Abbey the consideration that it's due, and today to help us talk about it is a wonderful panel of expertise, starting with Neil Huddleston of Save Glen Abbey. Also joining us are Town of Oakville Councilor Beth Robertson and Town and Regional Councilor Tom Adams. And Neil, the reason I think it's timely to have a chat about this is because you got a visit from the minister of the provincial government who's in charge of heritage designations. And one of the things we've always thought would be great for Glen Abbey, because it qualifies for it, would be a provincial designation as a heritage property. There are two heritage designations, a municipal one, which Glen Abbey fully qualified for according to the province's law, and we bestowed that, but it also qualifies for the provincial designation. How did that conversation go? This is a bit of a breakthrough, a bit of a new hope.
Well, thank you, Rob. Yes, the meeting that was arranged by our MPPs was indeed a very positive thing. We'd been working with the MPPs from back in February and pushing on them to make good on their pre-election commitments to do what's necessary to save the property. In the words of Stephen Crawford, I'll work tirelessly to save Glen Abbey, for example. So when we got the call that indeed we could have a meeting with Lisa MacLeod, the minister responsible for heritage, it was a very, very positive sign. And we had a very good meeting. So I'm happy to be here today on behalf of the group and talk about some details.
How many people were at the meeting?
We had our two MPPs, Effie Triantafylopoulos and Stephen Crawford, as well as the minister. We had three representatives from Save Glen Abbey, myself, Shelley Fisk,
We'll call her Shelley for today.
We'll call her Shelley, that's right. I'm terribly sorry. Shelley and also Mark from our group is there as well.
So how did it go? Tell us.
Well, it was a great opportunity to do a couple of things. Number one was to educate the minister directly without any filters as to what was happening, and to clearly communicate the desires of the community. The community is pretty well universal in its opposition to developing this property and maintaining it as a beautiful heritage property for the town and the province and the country. The other thing was it was an opportunity to do a little bit of exploration as to what exactly they could and will do to help us. And so we felt it moved the needle forward in that direction. We spent an hour together. We were at the Oakville Club overlooking the harbour, and when we found out that they were moving to Oakville Soccer Club as the next port of call, we suggested, and they embraced actually driving up and driving through the property, so they got to see what it is we're trying to defend.
I saw a picture on social media of the minister and the MPPs standing out in the property and talking about their visit. Have you had any other signs of comment on it?
Yes, there was a press release that they put out indicating that this was the first minister responsible for heritage that had taken the trouble to visit this location and to more clearly understand why it deserves the heritage designation and why it is we need assistance, because we feel that on the back of the town doing a tremendous job representing its bulk of its citizens by virtue of the council, making sure that they fight to protect this property. We haven't seen activity on behalf of the province at this point in time. And so our hope is that this step is a good step in that direction.
Tom, Beth, you have a question?
Well, I gotta say, I'm heartened to see the discussion going on, but we're, as a municipality, really concerned about how things have been proceeding over the last couple of years. This has been something that's been going on for a long time. It's not just a quick discussion that we've been having. This goes back almost half a decade. In fact, I think a little bit longer in terms of the discussion around cultural heritage in Oakville. Did you have any discussions about the length of the battle, I'll call it, that we've been going through?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Tom, because the reality is that a comment was made by one of our MPPs that was this not just a knee-jerk reaction to the heritage designation? Was it not just a knee-jerk reaction to try to stop development? Had it not occurred after, in fact, the development application was put in? And I was able to convey to them that it was part of an ongoing process that started way before the development application for Glen Abbey was put in by ClubLink.
Started with the 2009 Livable Oakville official plan, in fact.
That's right. And then, having sat in a number of your council sessions, I was able to convey that there were multiple sites in Oakville that were considered for heritage designation. And as you work through the multi-phase process necessary to achieve the designation, Glen Abbey became one of the top contenders, and it was therefore worked on well before the development application was put in place. And in fact, I was able to provide the minister and our MPPs with two handouts. One of them is the timeline that you have on your website in the town, which basically shows from 2014 through to 2018, on this particular piece of it, the various components of designating this as part of the heritage of our town. I also provided them with details of the heritage designation, again from your website, which is contains excellent material. And so I printed that off in full detail and gave it to Minister MacLeod to take with her so that she would be able to share that within her organization to show the homework that's been done and the detail that your town and staff have done in order to maintain this as a heritage property by designating it as a heritage site.
That's really fascinating. Did you have any discussions about the changes that Bill 108 have brought forward? I know that certainly Beth and Rob and I have been very concerned about the changes to the Planning Act and the Development Charges Act and all the other acts that are affected by the More Homes, More Choice Act set of changes that have been brought forward, and how that has really put the ball back in the court of the developers in terms of them being able to control the changes that happen in a municipality. Did you get any feedback from any of the three that you met?
Well, we did get feedback, and we expressed the same concerns that you've said. We talked about how the old OMB rules favored developers in terms of having to start from scratch, having to invest masses of money during the course of the appeal. We talked about feeling happier when Bill 139 came into play, and that then tended to put the benefit back to the citizens of the town and the municipalities. In terms of Bill 108, we very specifically asked, because we were concerned that it will clearly revert back to OMB. It's as though nothing happened with Bill 139. And it's very disappointing because many of the members of this provincial government voted in favor of Bill 39 and then voted in favor of Bill 108, which clearly, in our minds, reverted back to the old rules favoring developers. Mm-hmm. Including our two MPPs who voted for 108. Now, Stephen Crawford at the meeting clearly said more than once that no, the appeal or the appeals that are being held for Glen Abbey will in fact occur under the old rules, and that Bill 108 will not negatively impact them.
Did he mean the Bill 139 rules?
It was not clear what he actually meant. I can't remember specifically, but I got the impression from the conversation that the appeals that were running under LPAT 139 and the appeals that were running on the original 108, it all gets very confusing, and as I pointed out to them, the way that they do this as a government is rather ridiculous, because it's the same physical individual who comes and sits in judgment on you. I mentioned that if this was 100 years earlier and somebody tried to come into town and tell us how to do things, we'd have run them out of town. These days we welcome them as somebody from the OMB or LPAT or whatever it's called this week. So as far as our understanding presently is, it will not, reverting to Bill 1 or putting Bill 108 in place, will not negatively impact the appeals that we have in process.
So let's put the slide up that we just had up, and let's speak to that for a second. This is a slide that shows the change, not that one, the previous one, where the line goes across the screen and we talk about Bill 108. This one. What's happened, in fact, I regret to hear that MPP Crawford may be a little behind the times in terms of what's happened. The province has proclaimed regulations which take the Glen Abbey case that was under the Bill 139 rules, where the deference is shown to council's decision, and the question is council's decision good enough? Is it close enough to the laws? And they and these new regulations move that case into the Bill 108 rules, where the test is the application good enough, and is it good planning, and is it good for the property, and these sorts of things. These were the tests before Bill 139. So he's dug himself a hole it's going to be hard to get out of, because we aren't grandfathered on that. We've had that very clearly described to us by our legal counsel. And so the result is that I'm not sure what the MPPs can do except pursue the opening that they've created with the minister. Did the minister give you any idea when she'll act?
Well, the minister talked about the following. She talked about advice to her from her legal brief was to wait until all of the appeals have run their course. She said that in terms of making this property a provincial site, she wasn't aware that it had been done before under these type of circumstances. She paralleled our situation a little bit to something else she's involved in, which is to save the beautiful hotel in Ottawa. This has been applied to be developed. This is the Chateau Laurier. It's been applied to be developed and expanded by a developer in Vancouver, she was telling. In that case, however, the town council fully supports the development, and therefore you would hope that in fact the citizens support it. Our findings here in Oakville is, and we sort of poll the citizens at each of the home shows that we go to. We've got about 95% support of saving this property, and so there were no commitments whatsoever to do anything in terms of a provincial designation. Her commitments were to work with the two MPPs who are clearly new in their jobs, and my personal interpretation is that they don't yet know what they can and cannot do, and so she volunteered to guide them and give them some coaching in terms of helping them continue to raise the visibility issue. But no, there were no commitments to do the designation.
Okay, well, let's remind the viewers what the Glen Abbey proposal actually looks like, and we've got a picture that we could share with everybody that shows.
That's a lovely picture, and it shows, I think, the perhaps in some ways the nicest part, which is the creek area, which in any case couldn't be developed because you can't build in a floodplain.
This is sort of the upfront top view that the ClubLink people show as to what the development is supposed to look like. And a lot of people in Oakville are afraid that it's going to look like a lot more traffic because the area is already fully built out. And this is a 3D view of what the proposed development looks like, and you can see from that there's a lot of houses. In fact, there's 3,222 living units there, and that's estimated to hold 9,000 people. And
that's plus commercial, and that's plus retail. So yes, we estimate there's going to be. Our group has done some calculations, and we estimate there's going to be at least 9,000 extra vehicle trips on Dorval and Upper Middle Road parking lot. I mean road. It's just going to be ridiculous to add that number of vehicles. I live backing onto the property, and I go visit my children and grandchildren here in town. And getting onto Upper Middle Road at certain times of the day is not an easy task. So to have that additional number of homes there just makes no sense whatsoever. It is just a ridiculous development. In addition to that, there's no school that can be in the area to hold that capacity of additional children. And so by every measure and by everything that we look at, this development makes no sense.
It's a really big issue all across town, and it's not just for those who back onto the site. I certainly represent an area that's in the northeast part of Oakville, and Beth is the other end of town in the southwest. But both of our residents would be impacted by a new growth center being plopped down in the middle of Oakville, where none had been predicted in the past. And certainly, I think if we were to look at where would Oakville place an extra 3,000 units of housing, if we were going to put 3,000 more units of housing in Oakville, that wouldn't be the site. There are many other sites that we would be choosing ahead of that one.
Well, in fact, we've chosen our growth nodes and our growth zones, and the whole point of an official plan is to direct growth where it fits economically and environmentally. Beth, let's not brush too quickly past this school issue. It's my impression that this government's not into building schools. Increasing class sizes seems to be the route to go in order to absorb all the kids. What future do you see for schools in this area?
I think that you will never have the room in any of the schools in this area for that many more students, even with increased sizes. Increased sizes now with our accommodated growth in the growth nodes that we have will be difficult to put 40 or 45 bodies into a high school classroom in this area. There's not enough room. And it's not just the learning in terms of teacher one-on-one, it will be just the environment for learning with that many bodies. And if you can't put 9,000 new people and not have a school, and there's no school zoned in that development.
Yeah, you know, you look at it, I see no high school, I see no public schools, Catholic or public, and I wonder where all these people are going to go. Neil, have you had any feedback from anybody on that question of schools?
It's a topic that comes up in our discussions, as I say. We get one-on-one feedback when we're working these shows, and it is something that comes up every single time, not from every single person, of course, but all of the those with younger children, see this as a major issue. You're going to have to try and bus people out of that small space. You've got road access that doesn't exist at the moment that you're going to have to build. And the idea of trying to get them to a local school. I mean, as I drive around, having grown up in a school that was around from the 1600s in England, I drive around, I can't believe how many portables are already at the new schools that we have here in Oakville, which I think is an absolute tragedy. It's clear that the province are not planning and building appropriately to support our students at this point in time. They need to put that kind of infrastructure in place before they even consider doing any kind of further development. There's just too many people and not enough spaces in our schools.
You know, Rob, we should talk about not only the school system, but the complete communities that we've been working at for a number of years. That includes the healthcare system as well as the school system. And in Oakville's case, we had to make a very significant contribution to the local hospital for its new build. And I'm not seeing significant investments by the province on that front either. And this kind of site being plopped into our middle of our community is not helping that situation either.
Pretty safe rule of thumb about the province and the growth that it orders municipalities to plan for is that they don't do their job to provide the transportation or the education or anything else that goes along with growth. They're always a day late and a dollar short. And that's a heck of a way to run a railroad if you want to ask Oakville's council, because we've been very critical of their inability to coordinate what they do.
And we should say that, to be fair, we've been on that particular issue for a couple of decades. That's not a new one.
Well, it goes back to when you joined, which is some time ago. You look young, you're
way back in 2003, we were on this particular path as well.
You're the youngest old-timer. The other thing that, before we leave schools, I just wanted to mention, we're up in Halton, the Halton District School Board and the Halton Catholic District School Board together are now 2 or 3 portables short of 500. So that's how many kids are in portables, and that's a heck of a system. Now, so next steps are up to you. Town council's kind of limited in what it can do. The case is in, and we're not supposed to, I mean, we pretty much have to just stick to that. We can't change it or anything. What's Save Glen Abbey's outlook? What are you going to be doing over the next year? We're not going to get resolution on the court cases, and by court I include the local planning appeal tribunal, but there's also a couple of cases in the Court of Appeal. What's your plan? Are you kind of perforce having to mark time like council has to, or do you have exciting activities planned ahead?
Well, exciting is an interesting word, so let me give you some thoughts. We view our job is to represent our community and educate in a way that the council and the town hall are restricted in some ways. So our job is to continue to maintain and grow support within the community, and to explain to them in detail how, although this battle to preserve this beautiful space looks like it's just to save a golf course, it's to protect the heritage of this region. And some comments that we get are things like, but it's only been around 45 years or 40 odd years. Well, Canada's only been around 152 years. So we have to build our heritage and make sure that it's protected moving forward. These things are important. I had the opportunity in my career to travel around the world. When I mentioned I was from Oakville, they said Glen Abbey.
People knew.
They didn't say Ford plant, although that's one of our pride and joys as well. As I pointed out to the minister, what would be next? Destroy our harbor so that we can build condominiums and nobody can see the shoreline. So to me, it's the point of the arrow. And what we'll be doing is, now that the door has been opened to the minister, and the minister has indicated that she wants to help our relatively new MPPs do what they can do, we'll be continuing to push with them to raise awareness. Maybe that's a new petition. We talked about the petition that had been collected a couple of years ago, over 10,000 signatures. It turns out that, well, you have to have it on paper and it has to be in a different format, and we'll help you get this thing done. And my question, frankly, was, but does it make any sense? Does it achieve anything? Because there's a lot of work to do something like that. So we'll take a look and ask some more detailed questions on it. And we'll continue to push. My father was a great proponent of the fact that there's no such word as can't. So when somebody says to me, we can't do this, I use his words and say, there's no such word as can't. I haven't thought of how to do it yet, or I'm not trying. So although we were told that the minister can't wave a magic wand and make this thing happen, I'm amazed at what people can do when they're incentivized to do it. And clearly this is a major issue of the electorate here in Oakville. And so we're currently polling each of the candidates in the federal election, getting them to state their position, and getting them to try and state their position in a way that's not weasel words, but in fact talks about what they can, and not only that, will do to promote and support protecting this property.
Well, that's good to know. In the couple of minutes that we have left, maybe you'll be working also, this is actually a question, maybe you'll be working on helping people understand that it's not hopeless, that although the province has interfered with Bill 108 in the middle of the process and changed the rules to favor the applicant, it doesn't mean that we are without reasons to be optimistic about victory in the court case, and council is unanimously pressing ahead with the court cases. The most important thing that you said is that you had 10,000 signatures on your petition, and by analogy, the WeLoveOakville.org people have 4,000, almost 4,000, sending in their opposition to amalgamation of Oakville into a city of Halton with, say, a mayor and 6 councillors, which would really pull local government away from the people and probably make it impossible for a group like Save Glen Abbey to get the kind of support that it got on Saving Glen Abbey. So I hope that you'll be able to contribute to, diminishing there are some people, thinking that it's over, give up, and I gather from the way you keep going to the home show that you aren't giving up, and that's a good thing.
No, we're certainly not giving up. As I say, we are committed to educating people, to motivating. It's a long distance race. It's not a sprint. We're significantly encouraged by the support that the council continues to give. We are also in contact with the We Love Oakville group. They are a well-disciplined group. We are a group of concerned citizens with not a great structure. We come together to do what we need to do when we need to do it, and so far we've had good success.
Well, 10,000 is an amazing number. Thank you very much for joining us to hear an update on Save Glen Abbey and what's happening there. We'll see you next time on Oakville Matters.